The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome to the Young American Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Bemister.
And I'm your co-host, Riley Murphy.
Today we're going to be talking about Sununu's Executive Order 65. Executive Order 65, it was more guidelines for what they didn't really tell anyone what they're going to do. They just gave us guidelines on punishments. So they essentially said if you break any emergency order, the Department of Health and Human Services can come into your home without a warrant or any private or public property to investigate the pandemic. And they said if you failure to comply with that, closure of property, closure of business, fines up to $1,000 to $2,000 a day.
Insane.
And it's just like, I don't even know how can you do something like that without due process. Like he's supposed to be like a freedom-loving, orientated Republican, and no red flag gun laws without due process.
Well, aren't they all?
Warrant. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of funny that he's like, oh no, we need to veto the red flag gun laws because you're opening the door without a warrant. You're allowing us to overstep our boundaries. That was his reasoning for the red flag gun laws veto. And now he's essentially created an executive order which allows people the cops to do the same thing. The police officers do the same thing, minus take away firearms. They can just go in and investigate.
Yeah, it takes away that boundary.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, it's Health and Human Service Department. Well, he did say that there would be usually police officers accompanying the Health and Human Services within private property, at least.
Right. Isn't that normal?
I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into like the Health and Human Services doing something like that, or I've seen some on like the CDC going into like rare cases per se of like super infectious diseases, but nothing this extreme with Corona besides out west. And even then, people are really not really fighting back, but legally fighting back.
That's a step going too far. Yeah,
that's a huge. You're violating rights. You don't have due process. There is no warrant. You can't just come on somebody's property and now, they're saying, well, we're putting out an executive order now, which allows us to do essentially whatever we want with no punishment. And if you refuse to let us do what we want to, we're now going to fine you $1,000 to $2,000 a day, close your property, seize assets, close your business in the name of safety.
The state of emergency, that whole deal.
Yeah.
What were we talking about the other day?
I
wanted to bring that up.
Stay at home 2.0.
Yeah.
What town was it? I think it was Plymouth. Plymouth released something that said, there's going to be a stay-at-home 2.0. And essentially, telling people there is going to be another stay-at-home order this fall. If you looked at Plymouth, they released a town statement. I think it was about like wearing masks and social distancing and the guidelines for, I think, the upcoming school year and then publicly as well. And they did what Salem did earlier this year, and they're mandating masks in public. Yep,
I've already noticed a difference.
Yeah, in like obviously you and I
more so up here than I have seen in the past, like since all this started.
Well, yeah, and it's weird because there's only I think 11 people in New Hampshire that are hospitalized from Corona, and none of them are in the ICU. So why are we? And there's not an influx in cases. There's actually a decrease in cases. So why are we so scared? And why are we doing another stay-at-home order? And why is this executive order being put in place? There's something more behind it.
Yeah, what's linked to that?
Yeah, and why is it allowing them to come into your private property? Like, if you're staying home quarantining, like they want you to, why would they want to come and see you?
Yeah,
that makes no sense. No. Stay away.
I don't think. I feel like they couldn't enforce that necessarily. They will.
I mean, they're going to try to, and they will at first
in large numbers.
No, I mean, once they bring it to something like a court or federal court to fight the state, or
like particular cases.
Yeah, there's going to be a lawsuit if they follow through with this executive order. Overall, it's just kind of like super tyrannical. If you look at it, he's highly restricting freedoms in this aspect of privacy and your constitutional rights, where he's just throwing them away.
With like almost a valid reason.
Well,
but
I mean,
it's not valid in my books, but
no. Well, it's safety. In the name of safety, And this is where we talked about safety has no boundaries.
It's coming off to the mainstream as like normal.
Yeah. Well, they want it to be normal.
Yeah. But it's not.
It's not normal. When have you ever seen the government be able to come into people's homes, seize their businesses and assets for not allowing them to come and see if you're sick?
You can't for a reason. You shouldn't be able to for a reason.
Yeah, and it's not like, where you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that I'm sick. Like, I don't know. You're going to have to start saying that to the Department of Health and Human Services now, like every time they try to come in contact with you.
Like, oh, we heard you were out of state.
Like, oh, okay. You heard wrong or something? Like, I don't know, talk to my lawyer. Like, what are you going to have to do now to that extent? And if you don't comply to them, what are they going to do? They're going to...
How far is it going to go?
How far is it going to go? If they're going to the part where they're willing to come into your home and fine us $1,000 a day.
See, I kind of almost want to see it happen.
I want to see.
I don't. But where would they go with it?
I'm curious to see the reaction
and the outcome.
Yeah, the outcome of it, and like how it would play out in a court. How the court rule with that. I mean, obviously, without due process and without a warrant, it's invalid.
Well, and the way they're going about it, they can get off of it. They might be able to.
I don't know. I think you need a warrant period. Like to just enter anyone's home. If you're a government entity, you need a warrant period. So the Department of Health and Human Services, I think, is a government entity. And that's, what we say, there's not really a fine line in the sand between safety and freedom. It's either all the way safety or there is no boundaries. There's no boundaries on either side. So, there's like, am I going to be 100% freedom orientated? Or
we're just going to keep bouncing back and forth.
We're not even bouncing back and forth. We're slowly just
safety.
Yeah, going towards safe. Well, I wouldn't even say slowly because it's been 19 years since the Patriot Act, and I mean a lot of the freedoms that we had once before are now gone.
The last 5 years have been nuts.
Yeah, last years have been insane. But again, I think that's where we see like the difference between libertarians, and this just goes to show that like Republicans and Democrats, they really don't have a difference besides on their individual opinions. Like when you look at Sununu and you're saying, well, he's a Republican, he's freedom oriented, he believes in the Constitution. Well, according to Executive Order 65, clearly he's not.
Yeah. And what are you in support of again?
Yeah. What are you? Yeah, exactly. And he's contradicting himself on what he said on red flag gun laws, and now with Executive Order 65. And I think that's where some people are now being drawn towards like the Libertarian Party, where it comes into more like, like Joe Jorgensen and like freedom oriented aspect, because she's not willing to compromise on red flag gun laws, Health and Human Service Department, things like that. She's not. Like
she's in full blown support and freedom.
Exactly.
Freedom, your rights.
She understands that like the government shouldn't have a say in your personal life. It's called your personal life for a reason.
It's your freedom. It's your personal life.
It's your personal liberties, and that's where the party, I think, focuses more on individual liberties instead of the community as a whole. Because when you focus on the individual, you're essentially focused on everybody. You're not just focusing on a community. Or like, okay, you might be focusing on just the community, but you want to censor it towards the whole United States. What's good for California isn't good for Idaho, and what's good for Idaho isn't good for New Hampshire. Like, you can't really...
It'd be a disaster.
No, and that's what we're seeing now with like the federal government and all these corona guidelines and things like that. When they're coming and they're stripping us of our freedoms, and a lot of people are like, oh, in California, they're like, oh, this is what we want. Like, okay, cool, you want your rights stripped away. Well, here in New Hampshire, we don't. So please keep your...
Have fun with that.
Yeah, have fun with whatever the hell you're doing.
Don't bring it our way.
No, don't bring it our way.
Don't bring it over here.
And, so we see a lot of people moving out. It's like political refugees, per se, of each state. They get out of there because they're so bad, because they're so controlling, because they're taking so much money. It's hard to live. The cost of living is going up. They don't like what their politicians are doing. And then they come here and vote for exactly what they just left. It's the weirdest thing. And they even say, well, we left because California isn't as good as quality of living as it was before. Well, that's because you continue to go towards these extreme progressive left-wing policies, and you're going to get extreme progressive left-wing outcomes. You're going to really figure out what their political system...
What you wanted.
Well, yeah, you look at like the governor, right? And he owns, I guess, a winery, and I forget the name of the winery, but the governor of California wrote himself like a tax break or relief.
I believe it's Newsom, right?
Yeah, Governor Newsom. Newsom had his own winery, and you could see that like that whole party aspect, the left wing, they're benefiting themselves and they're benefiting the politicians. They're not there to benefit the people. And, some people might disagree, but you look, Governor Newsom, how many other wineries where Newsom was got government bailouts or government relief, or were allowed to, whatever help or social assistance they got from the government. How many other wineries got that within California? I'm pretty sure it was only like 5 or 6 out of...
Slim.
Yeah, there was not a lot. Not a lot. But, there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. It's the two-party system now and I'd say the three-party system, or the two-party system and then third parties or fourth parties or fifth, whatever you want to call it. It's just the system we have now and then the system that we want. We want something where everyone has a say no matter which political party. I think we want to see Joe Jurgensen on the debate stage with everyone. We want to see the Green Party up there. Well, I'd like to see every nominee from every party. Right. Because the way I look at it, they're kind of not censoring, but they're just not giving a fair chance. Like if her name's on the ballot in a certain state, you know what I mean? At least they should be able to hear what her opinion and voice is against whoever the main runners are.
But you know why?
Because
there's no money in it.
No, there's no money in it.
That's the problem. Until there's a third party with established base of money and enough constituents, then it's never going to happen. Because you need money to play.
Yeah.
And right now, the Libertarian movement has very limited money.
It's growing.
It's growing, but
it's growing substantially.
It needs to be much, much bigger than it actually is if they want a seat at the table. And that's part of the problem right now is they don't have the money to buy that seat at the table.
There's going to be that one guy willing to shell out a bunch of money to...
Yeah, you need a Koch brother, you need a Soros, whomever it is. You need that guy for that party that's going to start funding things and actually start to bring attention to it because as of right now, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, none of them are covering anything from the libertarian side of things.
Well, they don't want you to because I think it kind of disavows like whatever they've said in the past. Like the whole two-party system goes against everything they say. It goes against like, oh, wear a mask, individuals, like they've always argued about abortion on Fox News. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? It's someone's personal life.
Yeah.
I might not agree with it, but that doesn't mean I have to get involved with it.
Agreed.
And I think that's too of the narrative of like the libertarian movement. They don't like that because it's basically telling people to mind their own business, and that's what people are interested in the news because they get so emotionally invested into it, and they get so fueled, and they get so concerned with what other people are saying, and they want that whole control aspect. And I think it comes to the part where like media just won't show a Libertarian Party or like a third party on a major stage because they don't want that.
They're scared message. Even if they were.
Yeah, into it. It also has a huge part with like you can get that message out there if you have enough money. But at the same time, if people don't want your message heard, doesn't matter how much money you have.
Doesn't matter.
You could have all the money in the world, but if they don't want your message being heard and they're not going to run on their platform, you can't buy your way into something that they won't sell you.
Yeah, you can always buy your way in, though.
There's
always a number that it takes.
There is, and there's always an alternative.
Yes.
There's always alternative solutions, but I think right now what it comes down to is the narrative of the outlets and who runs the outlets and who owns them right now. Because if you look at it, the people who are in power and the ones who are in government are the ones who have the most influence.
Part of the problem with a third party is no singular third party has ever really taken the reins and been able to pick up enough steam behind it. You've seen the Green Party in the past. Yep. You've seen, quote, independent parties come up. You've seen Libertarian. Any single one of them has taken enough.
I think there was one independent. There was one independent who was very, very close, who actually got a good amount of electorals, who kind of, in quote, disrupted the...
Well, Ross Perot disrupted things back in 92 with the Bush-Clinton-Perot ticket. But what did he have? He was a billionaire. He had gobs of money, and he spent it to get his message out there. He went to those major networks, and it was a different time, different landscape, because cable television wasn't as big.
Well, now they'll pay to push your message away.
True. Yeah.
True. That's a good point.
People will pay to push your message away.
Yep. There's always someone that will pay for the other side of it.
Every time.
But that's why Ross Perot got through, is he had the money to back it up.
Yeah.
And
well, it's a perfect example too.
Ralph Nader never had the money to back it up.
That's how Trump got in office.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have picked a third party, but he knew the easiest route to go was to just pick the Republicans.
Yeah.
He said that back in the day. He said the easiest route to go if I was running for president was to pick the Republicans.
He had historically been a quote-unquote Democrat, but he had said publicly,
he is a Democrat.
If I ever wanted to win, I'd run as a Republican.
If you look at everything he's done, I mean, there is no fundamental differences of principle. Like, by principle, Democrat, Republican are essentially the same thing.
Pretty close.
By personality, they're different.
Yeah.
By opinion and in their own personal beliefs, they're different. If you look at Trump, he's a Democrat. He's passed more gun control than Obama has. He's outspent Obama in one term compared to Obama's 2 terms. And again, the whole infrastructure deal, if you're going to talk about corruption, let's talk about the $1.8 trillion infrastructure bill that he passed and only used $600 million to rebuild the Port of Louisiana.
Talk about him.
That's literally
let's talk about him. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what you look about it when people are like saying, "What's the difference between Republicans and Democrats?" There is none. You know, what's the difference between Obama and Trump? There is no difference fundamentally besides that he has put more money into the economy than Obama did. Obama put money into social programs and taxing the people to pay for the social programs, while Trump focused on the economy and our infrastructure. Really went to one port and a wall. That's about it.
Wow.
I've heard it's like 1/16 done.
Well, on top of that, they still have like prototype parts in place where like they're just bolted in, not even fully welded. Yep. And you see people that are literally taking these like 10, 12-foot section wide bars off the wall, having people drive through the wall, and then they're putting it back up. Like, you can go on YouTube and you can see it, and they're not fake. They're real videos, and it happens every single day where they're unbolting the wall, driving through, rebolting the wall, and then they're putting, like, you know, making it look like, oh, it was untouched. And they're doing it every day. Like, it's making it 10 times easier for people to just, let's get a car across, and then let's do this. And I know we have like surveillance in place, but what's good is our whole point of the wall was we don't have to put as much manpower because the wall is going to take care of it.
That was supposed to be.
We don't need to keep putting more manpower into it.
Yeah, we don't. And I think that's too where like Obama took away from the Defense Department's budget, and then Trump raised it, but then he took away from it again. So again, that's where it comes in. What's the fundamental difference between Obama and Trump?
Nothing.
There's nothing. Like, you could look and just be like, well, I mean, like, I guess they have 2 different focuses, but that's it. They have 2 different focuses, main focuses, but their side focus, or whatever you want to call it, their other agendas have all essentially been very, very similar. His message was different with his voters. He took it to a 100%. Different demographic. What they were doing, there is no difference. There is no difference between Trump and Obama. The only thing is their demographic and who they're trying to please. And I think this is where it comes back to. You see a cycle where it goes every 4 to 8 years where it bounces back. It's never like consistently one party. It's always just back and forth. And that's because they're not different. People ask, well, why hasn't the Republican Party taken over? Why hasn't the Democratic Party taken over? Because there is no difference in them. You know, people are going to vote for a Democrat and a Republican because they think there's a difference.
They think there's a huge difference.
There is not a huge difference. They all basically believe in the same thing.
It's all very similar.
Yep. And if you look, not a single member of Congress, I think there's only like 4 or 5 that didn't vote to up their pay. You got to remember, there's Democrats and Republicans in there who voted to up their own pay.
By how far?
I forget what it is. I think it's like $137,000 right now, but I can't tell you what it was before. I think that was like the average salary of Congress, right?
That's going to happen no matter who's in. I mean, it's such an individual thing. You're looking at your own case and going, no matter what party is, typically it's going to come down to the individual in that case, and almost unanimously, just like what we actually did see, they're going to vote to up their own pay. That's how it's going to work. Well, and I think I'm not overly upset with
We're always going to see that.
I mean, I am and I'm not, because why I look and why you should be in government service, because you want to better the nation. You don't want to do it for self-gain. And now you look and you say, well, when you're voting for your own pay to go from like $100,000 to $130,000, do you really need that extra $30,000?
You might now to fight off coronavirus.
Yeah, you might now.
If you're going to have to stay at home.
Exactly.
Especially if you live in New Hampshire.
Yeah, you just have to.
That's more of an individual character issue than I think it is a party issue. I think most people would probably do that. And your point about, hey, if you want to get into this, you should be trying to get into it for these quote-unquote noble reasons, which is to serve and protect, whatever it might be. you got to understand at the end of the day, they're still people and everyone's still flawed in their own little way.
Exactly.
So that's the hard part.
I think that's where it goes to show that no politician really has the true interest in the American person. They have the true interest in their self.
Yes.
And well, at the end of the day, everyone's always got their self at the top.
And I think there are people out there who don't want to, like, who want to be in Congress or want to be in power and don't necessarily, like, they'd be happy doing it for free. They wouldn't mind doing it for free to better their country because of how bad they've seen it go in a direction, because of how far they've seen it change. I think those are the type of people that we need to vote in, and I don't think
they're too no, I 100% agree with that.
They're too few and far between. Yep. There's not enough of those people, and the problem with those people is
There's not many at all.
They get chewed up and spit out of the political machine because they don't have the...
Well, they're not willing to take the bribes. They're not willing to do the job.
They're not like the others.
And that's part of the problem.
And that's where people are saying, well, what do you mean they're not willing to do the jobs? They're willing to be a member of Congress. They want to be there. Well, no. They're not going to do the job because Congress isn't for the American people. It's for the American corporations.
What do they need
money
to get reelected? Money.
And how do they get that money in office? They do what people tell them to do for money, and then they use that money to get reelected so they can make more money. And it's a never-endless cycle of bribes and lobbying.
Yep.
Lobbying. Yep. Or it's really just bribes and
just stuck
extortion.
In this cycle.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where we need to start, I think, having stricter policy on politicians. Mm-hmm. And we need to have something implemented where if you start taking bribes or lobbying, that you should be either kicked out or severely punished.
Yeah, well, there's
I think that's going to be a very tough one to go about.
Yeah.
But definitely needed.
Yep.
I don't know how that had happened, but...
Yeah, and... You look at all the other government uprisings too, and you see all the people around the world that are upset with their country and their government and their community. Like Lebanon, for instance, it was 6 years of the Port Authority sending messages to the government saying, hey, listen, we have this much ammonium nitrate. We need to get this out of here. We're willing to donate it to your military. And they ignored them, and then all of a sudden it blew up.
Thankfully, it's waking other people up. I just read this morning, Egypt's taking a hard look at everything they've been doing in terms of storing that type of material and moving it to more secure facilities and trying to figure out what to do. But look at Belarus right now. Belarus is going through a mini revolution.
Well, everywhere. I mean, you look at Russia, you look at Serbia right now.
Yeah.
You look at Paris. Paris has been having like a revolution since 2016. Mm-hmm. They've been fighting and have never endless protesting in the streets for 4 years now.
Yep.
Now you look at the United States. Essentially, the same thing's been going on. They've just been downplaying it, or people have been getting hurt, and there have been riots. Like last night, we just watched a video this morning of this guy was taken out of his car. So I think it was somebody blew a red light while he was going through a green light, and he ended up colliding with the guy who blew the red light. And then the people in Portland and the Antifa guys ripped him out of his car, kicked him in the head, calling him a bunch of saying like white privilege. Wow, speech impediment.
You don't have English privilege.
No, yeah, I don't have English privilege. Yeah, English has been hard. So he got out. They was ripped out of the car. He's beaten. His girlfriend was assaulted too afterwards for trying to help him. And they just the guy was sitting there on his phone, and they were like, "You're going to sit here until the cops come." He's like, "All right." Like he had no issue with it.
This was the guy that blew the red.
No, this is the guy who went through the light. And then hit somebody who blew the red.
Gotcha.
Trying to get away from the protesters. So he was sitting there and they're like, you tried to hit protesters with your car. And he was like, I was literally just driving and I collided with somebody who ran a red light. Like, I don't know what you guys want to tell me. Like, I'll sit here, wait for the cops. And then one guy just walked right up to him and just kicked him while he was sitting. Like, it wasn't a punch. It wasn't like a slap or something like that. Or maybe like, I'm angry. It was a straight up like kick to the face. And he had this huge laceration on the back of his head. And he was unconscious for 15 minutes. Until they poured water on him, and then he moaned and rolled over. Like he was not.
Just insane.
It was insane, and that's where you look at it, and you're like, "Holy crap!" Like people are getting killed and hurt every single day.
This is what's going on right now,
and they're just not really showing that type of stuff, and it's happening all over the world. I mean, there isn't a country right now, I don't think, where people are happy with them. You have Venezuela, you have Chile, you have Brazil, which is in this huge war on organized crime. The organized crime in Brazil is just...
It's out of control. It's making Mexico look like a paradise right now.
Yeah, but then also you see Mexico just getting worse and worse and worse.
I know.
And then Brazil, everywhere's just getting worse.
The past 10 years, the world has just been taking
I'm sure Finland's all right.
This large
I think that's the only place.
Finland might be the only place that's doing fine.
There were protests in Norway because you get a lot of... Norway took in, I think, one of the highest number of refugees, and now the refugees are protesting that they want
better treatment.
Yeah, they want better treatment.
Yeah.
Which at the same time, we see where you're coming from, but that doesn't mean you've been here for less than half your life. You've been here for 5-6 years and you're rioting, destroying the streets. And I'm not saying you have a right to be here. I'm just saying, like, don't riot because you want more from the government. Riot because you want less from the government and they're refusing to give you
What
less.
did they give you? What did the government give you? They gave you an opportunity. It's your responsibility to seize that opportunity.
Yes. Equal opportunity and not equal outcome. Just because everyone was able to come into the United States doesn't mean everyone worked hard enough to be successful. And success isn't always about being, working hard. It's between hard work and luck. Mm-hmm. That's what success is. Just because you work hard doesn't mean you get lucky. And just because you're lucky doesn't mean you work hard. You can get lucky once and blow all your money because you weren't working hard. Or you can work hard and get lucky once, and then you can be set your whole career because you continued to work hard off of that luck. And these people just want more.
And more.
And more. Well, that comes with everywhere now. You see the government and the Democratic Party, like we talked about in our last couple of podcasts, was JFK's message. Not ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah, exactly.
They flipped that. They were like, hey, ask what we can do for you now, because that's our platform. We want to give you something, so tell us what you want so we can give it to you.
And then they just keep asking for more.
And then they keep, we'll give you more. We'll give you more, but in exchange, we need more of your tax money. In exchange, we need more people to do X, Y, and Z. In exchange, we need to ban this. And people are just like, okay.
Jumping into a different conversation real quick, the firearm the firearm fight has kind of dulled down quite a bit, I feel like, lately.
Yeah, no, since
it's been
the argument on gun control and gun rights has been crushed this year. 2019, it was getting bad with like, oh, we need red flag gun laws, we need X, Y, and Z, we need more restriction. And now you're seeing California just ended their high-capacity magazine ban. Ninth Circuit Court went out of their way and said, you know what, that's unconstitutional. So now people in California can have 30-round magazines.
Things are starting to head in a way we would consider a good direction.
Yeah, in a decent direction. I think that's because you see so many more people buying these firearms and learning about them and taking these classes I suggested.
Education.
Yeah, and you see the less and less ignorant people towards firearms. And once you see less and less ignorance towards the topic, you usually see less hostility because people are educated and they don't need to get all defensive because they feel like they don't need anything and they're being attacked. And that's awesome to see that now.
More people have guns. More people are comfortable with people having guns.
Yeah, in 2019, everyone thought, oh my God, like if
with all the shootings and
Chicago's been blowing up. I mean, everywhere is just been getting worse and worse.
New York City, even Boston, since all this stuff going on with George Floyd, like there was so many more shootings. There was drive-by shootings. Yep. There was like an influx.
Quite a few of them.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. It's just because everyone's upset with everyone for no one particular reason. Well, I mean, there's multiple reasons, but it's because they're being told to be mad. It's not because there's any personal events or because they've been involved with. It's because something that happened halfway across the country. Not saying you don't have the right to be mad about it. I'm just saying if you've never, if you don't have a personal opinion on it, why are you being so passionate and burning these buildings down and
Well, some people are going after it for the fight of that. Well,
I also see everyone is a different
message. But some people are just being ignorant.
Yeah, like, I support the movement behind BLM, but I don't support the organization. It's a Marxist organization designed to fund the Democrats and to push their narrative.
And the money just flushes right there.
Yeah. However, I do agree that there are hundreds of laws written around systematic racism, specifically in the 60s with the Black Panthers. And then you see down all throughout history. Sure, it's not just the African American culture. There's Asian culture and Irish culture involved with that systematic racism. But more so we see, I guess, targeted towards African American, or they're more outspoken about it.
I mean, I think on top of it, it's totally a thing, but I feel like the media coverage on it has made it even more of a problem at the same time.
I think they've taken what was nowadays no one's going to write. Yeah, no one's going to write a law about systematic racism. No one's going to write a law nowadays about blocking a certain race or for a certain reason. These gun laws, they're not going to do that anymore. It's just done. However, we still have the old laws in place that were written for that reason.
Right.
So why still have them? When historically it's well known that these laws were there for that reason, just get rid of those laws, rewrite them, even if it's something very similar, even if it's something, just get rid of it and rewrite it.
Yeah, just get it out of the way entirely.
Yep.
It's old. It's outdated.
Yeah, and like the 60s with all the Black Panthers, that's where we saw, I think, like the Brady Bill with all that fun stuff from Reagan.
Which one was that?
They essentially just banned machine guns and put them on NFA items for if it was a machine gun,
Gotcha.
SBR, SBS, or suppressor, you need a tax stamp, and then machine guns that were made after, I think, May 6th, 1984, you have to have a tax, or you can't even buy them. So only machine guns that are made prior to that date you're allowed to register with the NFA. Anything that's made after that date, you have to have an SOT off of an FFL, so you need to have a federal firearms license, and you have to have a manufacturer's license, or have to have a reason, like you make parts for these weapons for the military, or you sell them to police officers, or you manufacture accessories and you need to test them. You can get reasons for that, but it's so
Or you're
hard.
A gangster from the 1930s and you need a Tommy gun.
Yeah, or you're a felon and you don't care about laws. Because laws. I like when people say like, oh, we need these gun control laws, and then you go, well, when has a law ever stopped a criminal?
No.
Yeah.
It just makes more.
It does. All it does is just makes more. And number one reason I won't go into Massachusetts is because I carry a firearm most of the time. And when I go down to Massachusetts without mine, which I always do when I'm in Mass, I feel weird, vulnerable. I'm going down to a place that's statistically more dangerous than New Hampshire, and I have to leave my gun because,
oh my God,
New Hampshire feels that I'm responsible enough to have one, but for some reason, no. Just because you cross that imaginary line means, you're not responsible
Massachusetts, it's wild.
It is wild.
But that's what's going to happen when you have a major metro
area
in a state. You look at the other states in New England, they don't have that to that level. And Massachusetts has the two biggest cities in the region, in Boston and Worcester, population-wise. And when you get that kind of population density, things are going to happen. And that's why Massachusetts is more dangerous than it would be to be in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, typically Rhode Island. Well, screw Connecticut. Connecticut sucks anyway.
Yeah.
I hate that place.
Only Greenwich for the cars. Yep.
Car scene.
Yeah, the car scene.
And we can give them the casinos.
Yeah. Yeah,
sure.
Foxwoods, Wicked Sun, we like those, right?
Yeah. But, we're not. I'm not 21 yet, so I can't really enjoy it. So
soon to be.
Soon.
You have to be 21 to gamble?
I think
you
down
have to
there,
be 18.
You can be 18.
Gamble.
I think.
I'm not sure about Connecticut. I know Encore, for example, you have to be 21.
Yeah, Encore, you have to be 21. I know Foxwoods, you have to be 21. And my father goes to Mohegan for business trips, and they won't even let you in the restaurants unless you're 21.
Really?
Yeah, so you can only go to the room and then the pool.
Oh. Looks like I'm going to need to get you a fake ID.
Yeah. Says on podcast.
Whatever.
Hypothetically.
Wait till the discount limit plays at the end.
Yeah. All right. Well, great week, guys. Thanks for
joining us.
Tuning in. Next week, we're going to be talking about more Jo Jorgensen on her campaign path. We've kind of been slacked on that a little bit, so we're going to catch up with that. And Spike Cohen. Spike Cohen's has been doing a lot within the community, especially showing up to armed protests and taking pictures and such, which is good.
We'll fill in with Jo Jorgensen updates.
Every week. Have a good week, guys. We'll see you next Monday.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.